Welcome to the module, Navigating HEAR Post-Approval, Phase 1, Clearance Activities. As reviewed in the Post-Approval Overview, there are 4 main phases of the post-approval process. In this module, we will dig into the details of the first phase, Clearance Activities. The objectives for today are as follows. Understand the steps to obtain HEAR services following the approval of your HEAR application, the post-approval process. Be aware of critical deadlines for submitting required documents and data in the clearance activity stage. And obtain access to guidance and tools for successfully navigating the post-approval process. Let's get started. You may recall this flowchart from the post-approval process overview. We will anchor back to this throughout the module. But first, immediately upon approval, the HEAR Coordinating Center will notify you of any required or optional modifications to your application that came from the review committee. It is critical that you promptly review and agree to these modifications. Written agreement should be sent to HEAR_CC@westat.com. If you have questions or concerns regarding these modifications, contact the HEAR Coordinating Center at HEAR_CC@westat.com right away. Once any modifications are addressed, the clearance activities stage begins. The HEAR Coordinating Center will contact you after your project is approved and modifications are made to complete several activities. They will provide you with a link to My HEAR forms where signed documents and assurances need to be uploaded. All of these activities must be completed before you can ship your samples to a lab hub for analysis. The first activities, the IRB attestation letter, signing the data submission agreement, and signing the data sharing plan should be completed within 8 weeks. Additionally, the human and/or environmental materials transfer agreement for each lab hub you will be working with should be completed within 10 to 12 weeks post-approval. And the laboratory analysis plan should be completed for each approved analysis within 12 weeks of approval. We will talk more in depth about each of these in the next few slides. The flowchart also highlights the steps following the IRB attestation letter and DSA and DSP. Note that the data center will approve these documents and then the PI will submit project data, which will then be approved by the data center. This is the last step of the clearance activities phase. All of this takes place within 12 to 16 weeks post-approval. Here are a few general but critical tips to keep in mind for this phase of your project. First, start all clearance activities as soon as you receive notification that your project is approved. It may seem like the deadlines are far away, but unexpected delays can arise. So to ensure that they don't impact your ability to meet deadlines, you must begin work on these activities immediately. Second, work on the clearance activities simultaneously. There is no need to wait until one part is done to complete another. Again, you never know what could cause a delay, so it is best to begin right away. Third, stick to the timeline. It is important that to the best of your ability, you stick to the timeline. There are procedures in place to apply for extensions when absolutely necessary. However, it is critical that you understand that projects with excessive delays run the risk of not being analyzed. Projects enter the lab queue as the samples arrive at the lab, so when projects are delayed, they fall further into the lab queue. Now that we've discussed the overall process, let's dive into the details. The IRB attestation letter. This is a letter from your IRB. It is not a new IRB approval. This letter must state that the original study consents permit the use of samples and data for your HEAR project. It must also verify that the data submission and subsequent data sharing for future unspecified research purposes are consistent with the informed consent that was utilized with the study's participants. You may recall in earlier modules we mentioned that the ability to submit and share data is a critical component to receiving HEAR services. Because of this, informed consent consistent with the use of data for future unspecified research purposes is absolutely critical. A template letter can be found on the HEAR website and is linked on this slide. Note that all active links in this module and all other modules are available in the PowerPoint that is provided on the HEAR website. Please note the tips on this screen. You will want to be sure to submit your IRB attestation letter promptly, as it is required before receiving access to the HEAR Data Center portal. This is critical for subsequent steps in the process, including uploading your data to the data center. The IRB attestation letter must apply to all samples and data that you will use to achieve your study aims. Projects that include multiple cohorts with separate IRBs may require multiple IRB attestation letters. Your project will be stopped if you are unable to provide the required IRB attestation letter. The IRB attestation letter can be submitted by uploading it to MyHEAR through your MyHEAR account. The next items that require your attention post-approval relate to data sharing. Within 8 weeks of being approved, you will need to submit a signed data submission agreement, or DSA, and a signed data sharing plan, or DSP. The data submission agreement outlines your agreement with HEAR regarding the submission of data to the HEAR data repository. The data sharing plan describes the data types included, the data repositories to which data will be submitted, the timeline for data submission and release, and the appropriate uses of data. Note there are links to each of these items on the slide, and they can be found on the HEAR website. The DSA and DSP can be submitted by uploading each to MyHEAR through your MyHEAR account. Also, please note the tip on this slide is the same as for the IRB attestation letter. You will receive access to the HEAR Data Center portal only after the IRB attestation letter, DSA, and DSP are submitted and approved. Submitting signed data submission agreements, data sharing plans, and the IRB attestation letter is critical to your project moving forward. Once these items are uploaded to MyHEAR, the forms will be reviewed by the HEAR Data Center. Once the HEAR Data Center has approved the documents, you will be contacted with instructions for accessing the Data Center portal and how to upload your project's epidemiological data. Your data must be uploaded no later than 12 weeks post-approval. By 12 weeks post-approval, the relevant material transfer agreements must be completed and submitted to the Coordinating Center. Note this is with or without accompanying data. A Material Transfers Agreement, or MTA, is a contract that governs the transfer of tangible research materials between two organizations when the recipient intends to use it for his or own research purposes. An MTA defines the rights of the provider and the recipient with respect to the materials and any derivatives. There are two types of MTAs: the Human Material Transfers Agreement, or HMTA, and the Environmental Materials Transfer Agreement, EMTA. Both of these forms are linked on this slide and can be found on the HEAR website. These documents are used to facilitate the transfer of human biological materials and/or environmental samples between the PI and a HEAR lab hub. An MTA is needed for each HEAR lab hub that will be receiving materials from you, the PI. Transfer of samples between HEAR lab hubs is covered by the HEAR Material Collaboration Agreement. Please note that substantial changes to these documents can result in delays in the process, so you will want to begin work on these immediately upon approval notification. If you have questions regarding these documents, please reach out to the Coordinating Center at HEAR_CC@westat.com. Within 12 weeks after your application is approved, you will need to complete a detailed lab analysis plan or plans in coordination with the lab hubs assigned to your project. Please note that this process should begin promptly after your approval notification. You will need to work on this simultaneously with the items that have 8-week deadlines. You just have an additional 4 weeks to complete the LAP. Work with the lab hubs to create a detailed lab analysis plan. This is a critical step as it outlines what samples are needed and the analyses that are to be done. Once the data center approves the IRB attestation letter, DSA and DSP, the data center will contact you to upload your project epidemiological data to the data center portal. You will want to work closely with your lab hub during this process, as they may have additional lab-specific needs, such as a detailed statement of work, depending upon your project details and the lab hub's specific processes. Lab analysis plans will be very detailed. Some components of the laboratory analysis plan include details about the number and type of samples to be analyzed, the names of analytes, analyte adjustment factors, quality control plans, randomization, sample aliquoting, labeling and shipping, associated samples or participant data, project timelines, and the documentation of publications policy agreement. Please note that your plan may include a pre-test of samples to confirm their fitness for the requested analyses. The purpose of a pretest is to establish the feasibility of the sample analysis or fitness of the samples. Not all studies will need a pretest. More information on how to conduct a pretest is provided in Appendix 2 of HHEAR's Policies for Access to Services, which is on our website and also linked at the bottom of the slide. You will receive access to the Data Center portal after the IRB attestation letter, DSA, and DSP are submitted and approved. At this point, you will upload epidemiological data from your parent study to the HHEAR Data Center portal. The Data Center will tell you what data to include and how to upload your files. The Data Center must approve your data before you can ship your samples to the lab hub or hubs for your project. You will need to link your PIDs to the original study data. Please note, the Data Center must approve your project data before you may ship your samples to the lab hub. For some studies, sample-level data files will also need to be sent to the lab hub or hubs working with your project. This will not apply to all studies. This may include sample characteristics and/or phenotypic data. For example, for quality control or analysis, the lab might require information related to collection method, duration of storage, participant age, or other similar data. The lab hub or hubs will work directly with the PI to coordinate this step. Please note that this step is not tracked in MyHEAR. Just as a reminder, here are a few important tips for this section. Please be sure to complete the IRB attestation letter, DSA, and DSP promptly, as all must be submitted and approved before receiving access to the HHEAR Data Center portal. All clearance activities, including submitting project data to the Data Center, must be completed before samples can be shipped to lab hubs. Reach out to the HHEAR Coordinating Center at HHEAR_CC@westat.com if you have any difficulties during the clearance activity stage. As you prepare for the next stage, we recommend that you reach out to your assigned lab hub to ensure your samples are stored, prepared in a manner appropriate for the planned analyses. If there's any deviation in the available samples relative to the approved plan, i.e. a reduction in the number of samples, contact the HHEAR Coordinating Center at HHEAR_CC@westat.com right away. There are components due at 8 weeks post-approval and components due at 12 weeks post-approval. It is of the utmost importance that you stick to the deadlines to ensure access to services. You will want to start all clearance activities immediately. This helps mitigate the impacts of unexpected delays. Please remember that excessive delays or missing documents can jeopardize access to services. If you have questions or concerns, please remember that you can always reach out to the HHEAR Coordinating Center at HHEAR_CC@westat.com for assistance. And as a reminder, there's additional information available on the HHEAR website, such as how to apply, policies, support documents, FAQs, and links to the Data Center portal or data repository, each of which is also linked on this slide. Good luck, and remember we are here to help.